Hello and welcome back to the Chelmsford News Show. I'm Tom Christiano. Well, tonight I'm very excited because I'm moderating a debate for state representative of the 14th Middlesex District. It's a seat currently held by Tammy Govea. However, she's not running for re-election, so we have two candidates running that are here tonight. We have a Democratic candidate, Simon Cataldo, and the Republican candidate is Rodney Cleaves. And tonight we're going to have two 30-minute debates in separate shows. So if you're watching just one of the shows, tune in to the other one, which will be on YouTube and on Chelmsford TV, to catch the rest of the debates. So I'd like to start with Rodney Cleaves, if I can. Hi, Rodney.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Rodney, I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your background and why you've decided to run for state representative this year.
Well, the short and flippant answer I give to everybody is because you're not running. But no, trying to get out of it. My background is not in politics or in law. After graduating high school, I went into the Air Force because, frankly, we couldn't afford college. It taught me electronics. I got out of the Air Force and I went to work at Digital Equipment Corporation. And originally I was going to be a designer, but I found myself falling in love with teaching and course design and writing tech manuals. So the rest of my career, the rest of my 40-some-odd year career, I think it was 46 years, I was an instructor, or I was a designer or a writer, one way or the other. Always been interested in politics, always had a conservative point of view. And recently I ran for, I ran for school committee here in Chelmsford and lost. But somehow I sparked somebody who asked me to run for this position. And I anguished and talked it over with my family for a couple of weeks. When I finally decided to get into it, we only had 2 weeks to get my nomination signatures. So I got into this race rather late, frankly. And I'll go back a little bit. All the time I was working, I was also going to night school. All of my college was done night school. I ended up with a degree in electronics engineering and another bachelor's in computer science. Then I made a left turn, a right turn for me, and found myself a minister of urban ministry and a doctor of theology. So I've got a relatively eclectic background, but very interested and very much wanting to serve. I had served in Maynard when I lived there, and so yeah, that's the reason I'm running. Is just I need to get something done.
Thank you, Rodney. Simon Cataldo, could you tell us something about your background and why you've decided to run this year?
Tom, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. Again, it's wonderful to be here with you. Rod, it's great to be here with you too. Thank you for your service and thank you for running. My name is Simon Cataldo. I'm running to be your next state representative. If you voted for me in the primary or volunteered on our campaign, thank you. I am profoundly honored and grateful to be here in this general election. And if you haven't voted for me, I hope to earn your vote by November 8th. Running to be your next state representative is my first time ever running for political office or doing anything political. I started out studying environmental science, became a special education math teacher at a large public school through Teach for America, and then launched a national nonprofit for at-risk youth called Harlem Lacrosse. I served in the United States Justice Department as a trial attorney, prosecuting all sorts of public corruption with the intention of preserving and protecting the integrity of our government. Now I live in Concord, where I went to our public schools with my wife, Chessie, and our 2 toddlers. What I learned on our primary campaign when we knocked on over 30,000 doors of residents in the district was the power of persistent positive messaging. We kept the focus on what we can do to secure a livable planet, make sure that we have clean drinking water out of the tap for our residents, affordable mental and reproductive health care, strong public infrastructure, and great public schools for our children. So I'm looking forward to taking that momentum into the general election, and I'm so glad to be with the 2 of you today.
Thank you very much, Simon. Thank you. Well, Simon, the first question is for you. I'll be alternating who starts each of these questions. Simon, the state budget is approximately $52.7 billion. What are your thoughts about this budget? What would you like to see added to or deleted from the state budget?
So one of the issues that I heard about right at the beginning when I started running for state rep again and again was the Chapter 70 funding and formula for our public schools. Let's just start by talking about Chelmsford. We're here in Chelmsford, and I think there's a significant need to expand the amount of Chapter 70 funding for our public schools here in Chelmsford. Chelmsford has been punching above its weight. I'm a former boxer. It's a phrase that I like to use. Punching above its weight when you look at, in terms of its academic performance, when you look at the cost per pupil and the teacher pay in relation to the surrounding towns. And so we need to make sure that Chelmsford is getting its equitable share of Chapter 70 funding, and that's going to mean more money for our public schools here in Chelmsford and around the district. Yeah. That does not just affect people who are in the schools or have children or grandchildren in the schools. It affects every single property taxpayer in the town, because when there's a shortage of funding for our public schools, which is the greatest line item in all of our town's budgets in the district, it affects the ability of the town to do anything else, be it infrastructure, services for seniors, the pay for the town employees.
I see. Thank you, Simon. Rodney, your thoughts?
Would you mind asking that again?
No, not at all. The state budget is approximately $52.7 billion. What are your thoughts about this budget? What would you like to see added to or deleted from the state budget?
Well, there's so many things. I mean, frankly, I don't have access to the full state budget. I could have looked online. I thought it was maybe next year's budget is going to be about $86 billion and change. So I'm surprised it might have this much of a disparaging difference. But what I think, you're going to hear this a lot from me today. What I worry about is balance. The balance between what we're spending and the balance between what we're getting and how it's being spent. I agree we could do better with our public schools. But at the same time, we're putting so much money into our public school system now. We keep throwing more and more money at public education and getting no better results. So I'm not sure that's where it needs to be. When we look at not just the state budget, which is what's paid into with various taxes, but local towns charge excise tax. They charge, land tax. The towns pretty much, they bring in a lot of money. Maybe it's not enough. But do we expect the state to give that money back to us? We've already given it to the state once, and now we want some back so we can do some things. Why not just cut down on the taxes they're charging us to begin with? What I'd like to see in the budget or not, I'm all for extra transportation money. Our roads are horrible. I know you've been canvassing the district as much as I have, and you've hit those potholes, I'm sure. But I'll say that it's not a function of some other form of tax. So when we look at the budget, I've managed a $4 million budget when I was at the Veterans Administration. When I look at the state budget, I'm going to have to take a hard look at it, and we'll have to draw some lines here and there. It's a tough call sometimes, and sometimes it's easy. But the one thing I want to do is make sure that the citizens get to keep as much money as they can that they've earned. Yes. If we keep wanting to spend more and more money on things, the only place that money's going to come from is my pocket and your pocket. We just can't sustain that.
Thank you, Rodney. Thank you. Rodney, the next topic will be for you. We'll begin with you, okay?
You won't have to repeat it.
Yeah. No. What can the state representatives do to help improve public education in our state?
Well, we touched on that just a minute ago. Public education, again, I'll say we've been throwing money at public education forever and getting less and less results. I know I have a special needs daughter. I finally got her into a private school that we've been trying to get her into for a long time. So one area that I'd like to see is not just more money, but more awareness of the SPED programs. The problems we ran into personally is that the school didn't believe she had a disability. And even though we kept throwing paperwork from the doctors and the various neuropsychologists and whatever, and they just said, no, she's not disabled, we're not going to send her off. So yeah, Chelmsford is now paying to have her in a private school. And I'm glad that they're doing that, and that money comes in part from the city, in part from the state, and in part from an insurance policy that they have that covers it if we go over the thing. So I'm very interested in more SPED programs. I'm also very interested in finding a way, and I don't know how we can do this without taxing ourselves out of existence. I would love to bring back things like a vigorous band and chorus program. We seem to be concentrating on, the sports, which is a good thing. I was a football player. You were lacrosse, right?
That's right.
A boxer. And these kind of extracurricular activities are so important, and we keep forgetting about them. And we need to focus on academics that'll help people advance their careers into either a vo-tech school or an advanced college.
Yeah, thank you, Rodney. So, Simon, what can the state representatives do to help improve our education system?
Yeah, there's a lot, Tom. And first of all, I don't know how we're going to, with less money, add chorus programs, add band programs, better support students with special education needs. The answer is, of course, we're not. We're not going to be doing those things better with less money for our public schools. Our public schools are doing the best that they can with what we have. And Chelmsford's a great example of that. We need to be doing a better job of supporting them. With Prop 2.5, the town just is not going to be able to meet the increasing needs of public education in the town without more support from the state. So it is going to be our next state representative's job to go in there and advocate for the residents of Chelmsford, including the town budgets, the biggest line item of which is the public schools. So we shouldn't be talking about less money from the state, from Chelmsford, in order to meet these important needs that include supporting special education students and students extracurricular. We need to be talking about how does Chelmsford get its fair share. So in addition to those things, I'm a big supporter of vocational education. I think that we need to better align the workforce needs that we have in Massachusetts right now with how we're educating our children. And one of the greatest opportunities that we have here in Massachusetts is to drive students or give more students the opportunity to engage in vocational education, both in our excellent vo-tech schools that we have serving the district, Neshoba and Minuteman, and in our traditional public schools. We know that somebody coming out who is in a trade is going to have great options not only for post-secondary education, but to enter the workforce right away, to put food on their families' tables, support their families, and have a job for a long time that allows them to have a good quality of life.
Thank you, Simon.
The only thing that scares me about that is the term fair share. Maybe to some people that's a dog whistle. That's a dog whistle to me. I'm not talking about not taking more money in. We probably need more money, especially because inflation's getting to the point. Inflation is outpacing what we're paying for taxes right now. So we got to find a way to balance that. What I'm talking about is properly allocating the money we already have, and trying to work with what's in there. There may be programs that are just specious, or there may be programs we want to add. And you're right. To take a program that doesn't exist now and just sort of plop it in there is going to cost some money. But it is so important to the enrichment of our students. We need to find a way. And again, I'm going to go back to this. I'm a one-horse man. The balance of our needs versus what we're taking in versus what we can spend. And I know the school system is the largest budget for every town. But it's a matter of looking at it carefully and taking a pen to it and sharpening, well, I'll say pencil because we sharpen our pencils, not our pens, but, and taking a good hard look at it. I'm just not going to sit there and pass anything the legislature tells me to pass, nor am I going to pass anything the leadership tells me to pass.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm too old to worry about what someone thinks about me.
And Tom, I'm not aware of a single program that's getting money in Chelmsford Public Schools that's specious. And if there is one, hopefully Rod will tell us what that is.
Well, I'd like to find one because...
Well, Simon, the next question will begin with you. What do you think the state should do to help improve the safety of our students and teachers in our schools in light of the very unfortunate shootings that happen much too often in our country?
Yeah, Tom, thank you. This is a personal question for so many of us. I was one of many parents who woke up after the Uvalde shooting in Texas and wondered if it was going to be safe to send my toddlers to school that day. So it's a scary thing, and it's a solemn and important thing, and something that our state legislature needs to be working on. Let's just start with gun safety. So in the wake of the Bruin decision, some of our laws here in Massachusetts are not going to be tenable in terms of as a matter of federal constitutional law. And so we need to be very deliberate and tactical about making sure that our gun safety laws and regulations here in Massachusetts are enforceable under federal constitutional law, and that they're tailored to meet the safety needs that we have for people of all ages, including students in our schools here in Massachusetts. The legislature also needs to be applying resources where appropriate to changes to our school buildings to make sure that they're as safe as possible. That's something that's happened with some success here in Chelmsford, and we need to be looking at all of our school buildings to make sure that they're secure. I never like to start an answer to a gun safety question with mental health, because America's gun problem is uniquely American, and our gun death and murder problem is uniquely American. Our mental health problem is not uniquely American. It exists in many other countries, but it is worth noting that we could be doing a lot better in terms of securing affordable mental health services for people of all ages, especially children, adolescents, seniors, and veterans in our communities. And so that's something that perhaps we'll talk more about that, but I have some specific ideas on how we can do that.
Thank you. Rodney?
Yep, you don't have to repeat this one. Simon, I actually agree with largely everything you just said. I know some people have said that arm the teachers. No, that's not going to fly. But by the same time, I don't want my children to go to a school that appears to be like a fortress. And again, we have to balance. Perhaps we could have armed police officers or private security guards, especially in the larger schools. We're fortunate in that we seem to be in a part of the country, with the exception of Connecticut's tragedy a few years ago, that this doesn't seem to be a problem for us, but I'm sure everybody thought it wasn't a problem for them. Uvalde, I'm sure, didn't expect anything. But I have no problems with the sign-in. We had to sign in to get in here today. You did too, even though they well know you.
Yes.
I would have no problems, however, just like we have fire drills, with an active shooter drill, with instruction in the school, coupled with the history of what's been happening, so the kids don't think, I'm sure they're aware, but I wouldn't want the kids to suddenly think that we're suddenly going to be attacked. This has happened here. We want to make sure if it happens here, you're prepared to do this, this, and this. Certainly, we can find ways to, make sure doors are locked properly, closed properly. Maybe metal detectors. I'm not thrilled with that idea. It's very daunting. But yeah, we can do more. We can certainly teach our kids, teach our teachers, have drills, and invite private security or the police to visit the schools, if not full-time, at least on a random basis, so that if anyone does get an idea, they won't know when there'll be someone there to stop them.
Yeah. Great, thank you. And just to let everybody at home know that the candidates are allowed, if they would like, to debate with each other, talk to each other after each answer if they want to continue the debate in a particular topic. So just to let everybody at home know, this is an actual debate, not just a truncated, timed forum of ideas, but an actual debate. So Rodney, I would like to begin the next topic with you, please.
Sure.
What are your thoughts about ballot question number 1? This proposed constitutional amendment would establish an additional 4% state income tax on that portion of annual taxable income in excess of $1 million.
Let's start with a simple answer. I'm against it, completely. The state, and I don't want to tax anybody any more than they should be. Now, the state's original tax is a regressive tax to begin with. It's 5% across the board for everybody. So let's keep it at 5% across the board. Why should anyone making over $1 million, which someday I hope to make, get charged that extra 4% for everything over $1 million? And the worst part of that is, what about the doctor who never made $1 million in his life but decides to sell his practice and retire and suddenly gets a couple $1 million for his practice. He's now a millionaire for 15 minutes, and he's going to pay that extra money. No, I just can't go with that. But it sounds so good. The universal voter out there says, well, I'll never make $1 million. Let's let them pay. But let me give you just 4 quick statistics. I did a search on the Department of Revenue for this. I was expecting this question. And I found that the number of people that make $1 million or more a year on a regular basis, there's 55 of them in Chelmsford. Acton and Carlisle both tied at 85. And what surprised me was Concord has 384 people that make $1 million or more on a regular basis. So it's your neighbors that are going to get it, and maybe they don't care. Maybe they're going to say to themselves, I'm making so much money, I'll write an extra check for $40,000, $50,000, $80,000, whatever it is. I just don't see where A, it's going to make that much difference, and B, why are we singling out a few people? We've been hearing for years that the rich have to pay their fair share. Well, they finally defined who the rich are. Anyone who makes more than $1 million of taxable income. And their fair share seems to be 4%.
Above the 5%.
About anything over $1 million.
Yes.
But now we're struggling with this thing that the state has taken in $6 billion of extra income that the legislature is refusing to return. And they're only obligated to return roughly half of it. It's 2 point something. I'm sorry if the number escapes me. But the leadership of the legislature right now says we can ignore the bill. He actually said we can spike it. So there's money sitting there that should be returned to us. What if we all said, all right, don't return it to us. Use that for education and transportation. Then we don't need to add this 4% on top of the millionaire's tax. I know when I sell my house and finally enter into my final retirement years, my house is worth almost $1 million. Maybe it'll be worth more than that then. I don't want to be a one-year millionaire and have to pay extra taxes. It's bad enough. And maybe on my way home tonight, I'll scratch a lottery ticket that's worth $4 million. And I don't want to give any more of that away either.
Thank you, Rodney. Simon, your thoughts on question number 1?
Well, let's start right where Rod left off. Rod, you won't be subject to the millionaire's tax, even if your house crept over $1 million.
Well, there are ways to reduce it. I understand that.
Yeah, well, that's important for people to know, too, because I think that there are a lot of people who are looking at this and thinking, well, I'm looking on Zillow and the value of my home is over $1 million. Well, in Massachusetts, we have a $500,000 deduction, and we also can deduct anything that you use for a major renovation, like a kitchen renovation, and it's only taxing the addition in value of your house. So consider all those and think about how many of the homes in Massachusetts and even in our district are going to be subject. It's not going to be your $1.2 million home. It's not going to be your $1.5 million home. It's probably not even going to be your $2 million home, although maybe if you had the house for a long time and bought it for $300,000, you may have some additional tax liability. 0.6% of Massachusetts taxpayers, that's who's going to pay. The statistics and the numbers that Rod just mentioned, that's out of about 45,000 people in our district. Who's going to benefit from having a good public transportation system and a good public education system? It's going to be all of us, but it's especially going to be our big businesses in Massachusetts. Right before the pandemic, Greater Boston had the highest traffic congestion in the entire United States of any major city in the US. We have Orange Line trains that are burning. People are jumping out of the train into a river to try to save their own lives. We need to make investments. What happened as part of the surplus that Rod just mentioned is not going to happen every year. It happened in a pandemic year. And if you look at why we had additional and unexpected revenues, it's because of 2 main sources: capital gains taxes In other words, rich people's stocks did really well, and commercial taxes. So that was a one-time, unusual situation. What we're talking about with the Fair Share Amendment is an annuity. It's going to happen every single year. They're projecting somewhere between $1.2 and $2 billion of money that goes to your children's public schools, some of which, as Rod just mentioned a minute ago, do not have band, do not have chorus, do not have cheerleading, do not have sports, do not have enough mental health services, do not have clean air for HVAC systems. Maybe some of your children go to schools like that. Maybe you're having a hard time getting to work in Boston because the commuter rail doesn't run on time or because our traffic and roads are a mess. That's what the Fair Share Amendment is for, and it is for 4% of people who earn over $1 million a year. By the way, Tom, in Massachusetts, the average CEO or lawyer or doctor, they all make under $250,000 a year. So even
on average.
the top on average. So we're talking about the top of the top, not your average doctors or lawyers, very unlikely statistically to be your neighbors or my neighbors. It is a very small number of people, and we're not, sending them to the heathens. We're asking them to pay 4% of every dollar over $1 million. So it's not 9% of their total income. It only applies to the money that's coming over $1 million. This is the right thing to do for our district and for all of Massachusetts, and I support it.
I'm essentially worried about the slippery slope. I know this is a constitutional amendment, and it's therefore more difficult to change later, But there's going to be nothing in the world that says that has this particular legislature saying, well, we got away with the 4%, let's add another 2% on it. Nobody will notice, and before you know it, it's just going to creep up there and creep up there. Let's find a way to work within what we have. And if we need to fund more money for a specific problem like cheerleading, we'll have to find a way to do that. That's what we have to do, find a way to do it. Not just shotgun a lot of money at these programs and say, go do it yourself. Although, and this may be a follow-on, this may be one of your other questions, I'd also like to see less money going to the state, more money going to the individual cities and towns. They know how to spend it better than we do.
Let's just go back to make sure that there's no misinformation here. This is a constitutional amendment that has 4% baked in. So there's no slippery slope to 2%. No one's just going to backdoor another 2% on the $1 million earners. That's not going to happen.
Not on the constitutional amendment, but there's no reason to stop this legislature from saying we got away with this, we'll pass a law that gives this much more money.
That's not correct. So that would require another constitutional amendment to do an additional progressive income tax. So it is, anybody can go look it up, or it's even going to be on your ballot. So the constitutional amendment has 4% in it.
Okay.
Well, we're coming to the end of part one of our debate today. We only have a minute left. I'd like to remind people at home that we'll have part two, another 30-minute debate coming up. So if you've only seen this part, please check the part two of our debate because we're going to have more interesting topics. With a few seconds we have left, could you each give us your contact information, like your website and or your email address? 15 seconds, Simon?
I think I can do it in less than that, Tom. Thanks for that opportunity. It's SimonCataldo.com, SimonCataldo.com. Simon@SimonCataldo.com is my email.
Great, thank you, Simon.
Mine's very similar. It's Rod@rodcleaves.com is my email, or rodcleaves.com is my website. And I think someone set up a Cleaves for Rep website.
I see. But yours is rodcleaves.com.
Right.
Great, thank you. Well, I hope you had as much fun as I did listening to both of you. I think it's fantastic, your discussion of the issues. And I hope everyone tunes in for part two. Thank you very much. Simon and Rodney.